Welcome to this explainer. Look, whether you're pitching a massive client, leading a boardroom, or honestly just giving a toast at a wedding, communicating your ideas clearly, it's absolutely crucial. Today, we're building a highly practical public speaking toolkit. We're going to take you from a nervous novice to a polished, confident presenter. So let's just jump right in. Let me ask you something. Do you ever get that sudden, intense spike in your heart rate at just the thought of standing in front of a crowd? If you're nodding right now, trust me, you are definitely not alone. Public speaking triggers these massive, very real physical reactions for so many of us. We're talking a pounding heart, shaking hands, that sudden wave of uncomfortable heat. It's a completely natural biological response, but man, it can feel incredibly overwhelming. There's this amazing perspective from presentation expert Olivia Mitchell that really hits the nail on the head here. She says, it's like you're thrown into the deep end of a swimming pool. The way to build your confidence isn't to eliminate these feelings. It's to learn to swim. I love that. We don't actually need to eliminate the fear entirely. Zero anxiety, that's not the goal. The goal is managing it, kind of figuring out how to tiptoe into the shallow end first. To actually get there, we're going to break this down into a really simple 4-pillar framework today. We'll start with the right mindset, move into speech structure, tackle dynamic delivery, look at effective practice, and finally, prep for your next time on stage. All right, pillar number 1, the right mindset. Specifically, focusing on the audience. Because before you even write a single word, we really have to tackle that internal battle and manage your communication apprehension. So, the first big step here is making a mental shift. Most beginners get totally stuck in a speaker-centric mindset. They're focused entirely on themselves. Do I look okay? What if I mess up? But the real secret to confidence, it's shifting to an audience-centric mindset. You need to ask yourself, what does my audience actually need to learn today? When you focus on how you can serve your listeners, it literally takes the spotlight and all that pressure right off of your shoulders. And this whole idea ties directly into a psychological technique called cognitive restructuring. Fancy term, but it basically just means actively changing your frame of reference. Instead of telling yourself, oh no, this is a terrifying performance, everyone's waiting for me to fail, try reframing it. Think of it as a helpful conversation with people who actually want you to succeed. I mean, they're giving you their time, right? They want value. They're totally rooting for you. Moving right along to pillar 2, speech structure. This is where we build a logical journey for the audience. Now remember, writing to speak out loud is completely different from writing an essay. Your audience only gets one shot to hear your words, so the structure has to be crystal clear. Every great speech relies on this basic anatomy. First, the intro, where you immediately hook their attention and establish why they should care. Second, the body, where you logically guide them through your main points. And third, the conclusion, where you restate, but don't just lazily repeat your main ideas, ending with a very specific, realistic call to action. To make that structure truly compelling, we can borrow from rhetoric. This is the ancient art of persuasive writing and speaking. It's studied heavily at places like Harvard for a reason, because understanding rhetorical structure helps you figure out exactly how to persuade people to actually adopt your point of view. Think of it as the underlying engine driving your arguments. And there are a couple of really effective ways to build those logical arguments within the body of your speech. You could use inductive reasoning, which is sharing a few specific, really compelling examples to prove a broader, overarching point. Or you can flip it and use deductive reasoning, taking a broad, accepted principle and applying it directly to your specific situation. When you use these clear reasoning paths, the logic is undeniable, and it just seamlessly persuades your crowd. But here's the thing, logic alone won't save you if people get lost along the way. Because your listeners can't exactly rewind or reread a paragraph they missed, you absolutely must use verbal signposts. We're talking clear previews like today I'm going to cover 3 things, and summaries like as we just saw. Combine those with really strong transitions. It essentially stitches your points together so your audience doesn't have to work hard at all to follow your narrative. Okay, on to pillar 3, dynamic delivery. Your speech is written, it's structured, and now it is time to bring that message to life. You really want to think of your physical presence not just as some performance checklist, but as a toolkit to actively build trust. Maintaining steady eye contact? That creates a real personal connection. Projecting your voice ensures everyone's tracking with you, and using purposeful pauses allows your points to actually sink in, while simultaneously helping you cut out all those distracting filler words, the ums and uhs. Believe me, a moment of silence is so much more powerful than a filler word. And your delivery is also hugely impacted by how you actually build your sentences. When you're speaking out loud, heavily rely on the active voice and shorter sentences. You want to keep your subjects and verbs right next to each other. If you drift into the passive voice and just pack your speech with all these complex clauses, your audience is going to lose the thread and just tune out. Keep it crisp, keep it moving. Now, I have to mention a bit of a magic trick in public speaking, the number 3. The classic rule of 3 is all about grouping your ideas, examples, or phrases into sets of 3. It gives your vocal delivery this naturally rhythmic, almost musical quality. Human brains are literally hardwired to recognize patterns, and 3 is the smallest number you need to create one. It makes your delivery incredibly memorable and just deeply satisfying for the audience to listen to. All right, our final pillar, pillar 4, effective practice. This is where we build the muscle memory. Look, you cannot, and I mean cannot, just read your speech silently in your head the night before and expect to crush it. You need a targeted practice timeline. 7 days out, read it aloud to test that rhythm we just talked about. 3 days out, move to mirror practice so you can actually watch your facial expressions. 1 day out, practice with a simulated audience. Some modern courses are even recommending virtual reality to mimic the real pressure of a conference room, which is wild, but it works. Remember that swimming pool analogy from earlier? Well, following a rehearsal timeline like this is how you practice what Olivia Mitchell calls tiny acts of courage. By systematically exposing yourself to the pressure of speaking in these small, totally manageable doses leading up to the big day, you are actively tiptoeing into the shallow end. It ensures that when you finally step up to that podium, you aren't completely overwhelmed by the physical anxiety. You've basically already processed those feelings. Your very last practice step is running through a quick but absolutely crucial checklist. Always test your presentation software to avoid those dreaded tech failures. Refine your visual aids. Make sure they're enhancing your words, not distracting from them. Check your timing strictly so you respect your audience's schedule. And run through those transitions one last time. Doing this comprehensive final review is going to solidify your confidence right before the big moment. Which brings us to section 5, your next time on stage. We've covered the 4 pillars, moving from internal anxiety to a fully polished, audience-centric presentation. So the question is, what will your leadership legacy be the next time you step up to a microphone? By mastering your mindset, structuring your ideas logically, delivering them dynamically, and practicing with real purpose, you are now completely equipped to make your voice heard. Remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be prepared and focused entirely on your audience. So, what powerful message are you going to share with the world?